Welcome back to Patrick Christie's Tonight. Now, Harry and Meghan, they have just touched down in Colombia's capital city of Bogota, where they were greeted by Vice President Francia Marquez and, well, we're reliably informed, some traditional dancers. Well, there you go. They'll also visit the first free town for escaped slaves in the Americas before heading to a Cali music festival that celebrates Afro-Colombian culture. There will also be events dedicated to the Invictus Games, mental health, female empowerment. But many Colombians think the Sussexes are just being used as political pawns by the failing left-wing government to divert attention from the regime's many scandals. Well, I'm very pleased to say I'm now joined by Mail Online's senior global reporter, Nick Pisa, who is on the ground in Bogota and Colombia. Nick, look, great to have you on the show. One thing that I think seems very odd to me is that this appears to be a royal tour from a couple that don't want to be royals.
Yes, that's right. And it has all the trappings with the security as well that's involved. We've seen 14-car and police van convoys carrying the Sussexes through the streets of Bogota since they arrived this morning. They've been on 4 engagements since they arrived. The first one meeting the Vice President, Francia Marquez, then they went on to a school, and then they went on to this cultural exhibition in the city centre where there was some traditional dancing, from some very colourful costumes, and you saw from that clip there that Harry and Meghan got up and danced around, clapped their hands, and they met those dancers afterwards as well. There's a bit of controversy with the Vice President, Francia Marquez, over the fact that she seems to travel everywhere by helicopter. But we should say she has been subjected to several death threats and also several attempted assassinations. In fact, one only 2 months ago on her father, where a car that he was travelling in with her nephew was riddled with bullets, but fortunately both of them escaped unhurt.
Yeah, well, fortunately they did, but again, it does raise serious questions about why Harry thinks that Great Britain might be a little bit too unsafe for him, but he's happy to stand next to someone who has, unfortunately, quite literally got a target on her back. Can I ask, what is the point of this trip? Because some people are saying, well, you are kind of just doing PR here for, you know, a regime that has faced serious questions. I mean, I believe the son of the Colombian president is up on money laundering charges, I think, in relation to drug traffickers in his own father's campaign.
That's right. I mean, there hasn't been that much interest from the ordinary Colombians that I've managed to speak to in the street. A lot of them, obviously, they know who they are, but they're just wondering what on earth they are going to do here. Obviously, their agenda is to promote cyberbullying. They're saying highlight women's empowerment, as you said in the introduction, and also look at the country's heritage and history. There's obviously a very strong link with the Afro-Caribbean, and we know Meghan on the visit to Nigeria was proud to emphasise her Nigerian roots there, and they will be making a visit up to that village, which was the first free town for African slaves, later on over the weekend. But yes, there are concerns from the Colombians that maybe this is distracting from other more serious events domestically as well. They are concerned about the tensions between Colombia and Venezuela over the recent election over there. And they are focusing on the fact that maybe more should be done, focusing on the relationships with neighbouring countries as opposed to maybe this tour.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. So you think that Meghan is possibly, given the nature of some of the itinerary that we've outlined here, going to be trying to emphasise her own cultural roots while simultaneously bringing an education on cyberbullying to people in rural Colombia?
I think so, yes, definitely. I say the village that they're going to up near Cali was set up about 300 years ago. It's a free town set up by slaves who used to be in that area of South America, in that area of Colombia, and it has a very long history and heritage with Africa. And I think there will be a lot of emphasis on the connection to Africa when she visits that area with Harry at the weekend.
So just to emphasise, so from what you can gather, you know, you're on the ground, quite a lot of local apathy from people there saying we're not really that bothered about them, why are they here? Massive security presence, so what, about 15 armoured cars? Go on, just talk to us about what it is like, that security presence, go on.
Well, so they've closed off the streets surrounding the school that they visited, and they closed off the streets surrounding the cultural centre that they visited earlier today as well. And there is as I say, a 15-car convoy that is following them around. There's also armed soldiers with them as well. The security is quite immense, and I think also we have to focus not only is that security on them, but also on the fact that, as I say, there have been these death threats to the Vice President Francia Marquez.
Yeah, no, indeed. All right. Well, look, can I just say thank you very much for coming on and giving us, just a bit of a glimpse, really, of what it's like on the ground. I would hope to chat to you again soon, actually, Nick. So thank you very much. It's time to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. OK, we'll start with the Metro. Sexsomnia. I believe I was raped in my sleep by but so-called experts said I had, sexsomnia. All right, I'll just go into this. A woman has won a £35,000 payout after her rape case was ditched over dubious claims that she had sexsomnia. So essentially, she claimed that she was raped. Apparently, doctors tried to claim she had sex in her sleep. So, right, well, there we go. The Independent. British tanks drive back Putin's forces inside Russia. Now, I'll be honest with you, this to me does sound quite worrying on a couple of levels. The Challenger 2 vehicles supplied by Kyiv play a role in an audacious incursion into Russia. Obviously, I think, in the round, good, but I'm just wondering, would Putin think, well, these are British tanks? Anyway, we can maybe get around to that. The Daily Mail. So much for an economic crisis. Gangbusters UK economy now the fastest growing in the G7. An expansion of 1.3% since the start of the year. We've even outpaced the US, but the Chancellor still suggests that she'll have to raise taxes. Let's go to the Daily Express. Surely no need for tax hikes with our growing economy, so they've gone on a similar lines there. The Daily Telegraph. GPs next in line for the PM's cash handouts. Doctors demand an 11% funding rise after Starmer pays out to end the rail strikes. Let me go into a bit more detail on this, because this is what we'll zone in on. So, GPs are demanding an 11% funding rise. Family doctors across the country are taking part in industrial action after the BMA threatened to bring the NHS to a standstill to gain increased funding for their surgeries. Leaked letters reveal that the government has awarded them an above-inflation boost of 7.4%, which the union has said is insufficient. They want a 10.7% hike in 1 year, saying this would bring a real terms income back to where they were in 2018 and 19. Harriet, I'll start with you on this. So Labour looks set to be dishing out, or should that be the taxpayer really, looks set to be dishing out for GPs now?
Well, this is what we were discussing earlier. I mean, Labour is doing the sort of typical Labour playbook from the 1970s, and they have given huge amounts of money to the rail engine drivers, and now they're moving on to GPs. And, every sector of the state will be looking at this and thinking, well, we should be getting in on this. I mean, we'll have nurses, we'll have teachers, we'll have them all. And what happened before? You had inflation, you had the economy tanked, and it's just very sad indeed. This is going to happen all over again.
Jules, how concerned should we be about this now, really? Because the other aspect to it is GPs, not all of them, but a lot of them, seemed, unbelievably happy about closing during the coronavirus crisis, very slow to get back to work. Loads of them, and I actually know this firsthand, loads of them decided to close early last week over this mythical threat of the far-right riots around the country that never actually happened, right? To any excuse, it seems. There'll be people say you should put doctors' receptionists in charge of the channel because they'd never let anyone in.
It's very true.
And now we're looking to 11% funding rise for surgeries. Is this right?
There's a few things I say. I really didn't like the language that the BMA used, talking about bringing the NHS to a stop. That sounded unbelievably aggressive, bearing in mind this is a patient's, the NHS service, not the government. The second piece to be said, I returned to my theme early on. The junior doctors never wanted 35%. They pitched it there for political reasons and for negotiation reasons, and they've got this large payout. And I said then, if you give them that, right, everybody else will come for it. And let's be very clear, if you're a union leader, that is your job. You've sat there and saw that resolution, so you've come for this resolution. And the only thing I want to say, I want to pay everybody as much as they should be, but let's be clear, it's people who often earn significantly less and definitely don't have the same kind of pension who are going to have to foot this bill. the last thing to say as well, one of the headlines talked about our economy growing, right? The reason our economy is growing is because of the work that a previous government put in. And it doesn't matter how much it grows because Labour are spending more than we're bringing in.
Why did he call the election when he did?
Exactly.
Oh, well, exactly.
Can I just say, this is actually, I will come to you, Matthew, but I will give you short as a Tory here. I mean, you look at stuff like this with the economy, why the flipping heck did Rishi Sunak call the election when he did?
Do you know the worst thing he did with the election? He surprised all of us in the Tory party. Like, what's going on? Look, he'll go to his grave with that piece of information. But the point...
Or Malibu first.
Via Malibu.
The economy is growing because of the work the previous government did. This government are now about to squander it.
All right, Matthew, I worry that the message that, especially the GPs thing sends out, actually, is that if you hold public health to ransom, if you hold people's health to ransom, you get a payout.
Well, I think there's a particular issue with the GPs, which is that the public's disquiet about the GP part of the health service is probably the greatest of all its concerns about the health service. I mean, a cynic might suggest they're saying capping the number of appointments. I thought they did that anyway. I mean, you know, my GP practice doesn't have a thing as an appointment now. It was all telephone triage way before COVID. So, you know, good luck if you ever actually physically see a doctor. So I think what we need is wholesale reform of GP's practice. One of the mistakes, and I admit to a mistake that the last Labour government made was when John Reid, who was Health Secretary, to keep the GPs happy, got them to sign a contract, which is when they stopped doing all out-of-hours work, and which he stuffed their mouths with gold. And that is, you speak to John, he would regret that. And that was one of the government's mistakes, because they didn't get enough back in return for the deal. So a new settlement, not just a big cheque.
Well, let's just keep it health, really, because the World Health Organization, remember them, has declared a global health emergency after almost 15,000 cases of Mpox, which is formerly known as monkeypox, were diagnosed in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with more than 500 deaths recorded so far. And despite the UK Health Security Agency confirming today that there are currently no known cases in this country, well, apparently Sweden tonight has just reported its first case of the more dangerous and contagious Mpox strain. Now, well, I mean, should we be worried about this? I mean, because, look, from where I'm sitting, you know, we've got the World Health Organization, which I think at times has been an absolute joke and a bit of a disgrace, actually. People are a bit sick of these kind of global health warnings and the fear that comes with it. But, I mean, I don't know, it's in Sweden now.
Well, there's two things to be said. Firstly, I wanted our authorities to say anybody coming from that said country will be screened. Anybody who's been anywhere near that country will be screened. That's what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear it's a very low risk. And the second thing, the World Health Organization need to be very careful about issuing these reports, because if they're not real, these alerts, then we'll start to ignore them. So they need to give us what the parameters are and stick to them.
Well, the other problem is that we've got Labour in charge, and Labour last time called for longer and harder lockdowns. So I'm worried they're going to any excuse to put us all in lockdown for.
Well, so we've had two interesting ones there. Whether if this does erupt, I mean, that's looking obviously, you know, a bit into the future. Hopefully it doesn't. But if it did erupt, would we all go into lockdown? I think the more immediate thing, Matthew, might be kind of what Sean raised there, which is, should we be now just shutting the borders to?
Well, I think health screening is a perfect thing. I mean, there was actually a bit of a previous Mpox scare, because there were cases were found in the gay community about 18 months, 2 years ago, and there was a vaccine programme, so I'm vaccinated.
Oh, really?
But the vaccine programme, Teresa Coffey was the health secretary, and she stopped the vaccine programme because the number of cases, it basically turned out to be a bit of a, you know, there were only a limited number of cases, not as many as they expected. It's the smallpox vaccine, basically. It's not very nice because they can't just do it, they have to do it into the underlayer of the muscle. So it's like the BCG, if people remember that from school. So it's a bit more painful than a normal shot. But I mean, it's a very cheap and readily available and long-tested vaccine.
Right. So